Old ghost stories, an evil magician, black magic, serpents, songs and martial arts. Let's talk about the craziness that is Anandabhadram. Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage and Anandabhadram has all the elements that can make for a great and creepy Halloween movie. Mysterious dark forces and an outsider who is coming back to his little remote village in the beautiful southwestern Indian state of Kerala. Anandabhadram is a 2005 Malayalam language fantasy horror movie, a wild and weird genre cocktail. And while it doesn't come together all too smoothly, it's nevertheless a very interesting and often fun time. It was directed by Santosh Sivan, who is known first and foremost for his outstanding work as a cinematographer. He has worked a lot of times with the great Mani Ratnam and is responsible for the captivating images of Roja, Iruva, Dilse and many more. So of course he not just directed Anandabhadram but also did the cinematography himself. And as you would expect, the camera work is one of the film's highlights. For me, it's not on par with what he was able to achieve with Mani Ratnam at the helm, but he's definitely able to create a very immersive and also very dynamic feeling. He wonderfully captures the mystic atmosphere of that little village the story is set in, all the surrounding nature, but especially a mysterious enchanted cave. And it transports you right into that supernatural setting of the film. Always in this heightened B-movie genre fashion that has just a lot of panache. There's a lot of joy to the presentation, with wonderful close-ups, jump cuts, sweeping camera movements and a lot of wild editing and a bit over-the-top performances. On top of that, very loud and distinct sound and music cues. It can get pretty wild and rough, and for me it worked pretty well in the scenes itself, while I thought the overall editing, or more so the structure of the story and film, is a bit all over the place. But I will come to that later. I think the camera work and editing are the most fun in the few martial arts scenes the film has going for it. Those combined with the supernatural, the local setting and the stylized presentation really reminded me of the Hong Kong classic A Chinese Ghost Story. The martial arts depicted in Anandabhadram is called Kalaripayattu, or simply known as Kalari, which originated in Kerala. The film itself is based on the novel of the same name by Sunil Parameswaran, which was inspired by tales that his grandmother told him as a child. And in a similar fashion, the movie begins with a mother, played by the wonderful Revati, telling her young son the story of their family and the little village they are from. It's a great sequence, probably my highlight in the entire film, that captures the magic of those ghost stories or fairy tales that you get told as a little child. The mother is a great storyteller, using her face, her hands, her voice. And of course it's also beneficial that they are surrounded by a lot of candles in the dark. The whole sequence is very exemplary for the film's style and it puts you in the right mood from the beginning. The actual story of the film is then set many years later, and that young boy who grew up in America is now an adult, coming back to his ancestral village to return the ashes of his dead mother and light candles in her memory. Anandan is played by Prithviraj Sukumaran, who brings a lot of charisma to this role. I think stories about an outsider who is coming to a mysterious place where he doesn't really belong always have a lot of potential. A character like that oftentimes functions as the audience's alter ego, and it's also a good opportunity for some funny moments, misunderstandings and mix-ups. On one hand, it's funny to confront that outsider and the audience with the strange and superstitious manners of the villagers, and on the other hand, it's also fun when those are actually all legit and the protagonist really has no clue what he has got himself into. Another great sequence is the whole first song, Shiva Malikavil, which at least to me seemed to be very traditional. It is playing on the radio, in the movie world itself, with this typical low quality old radio sound, and then it becomes this wonderful song that is played over a very fun montage that perfectly emphasizes how strange Anandan is in that village. He goes jogging and seems to be very curious and joyful to explore all the places, but he's basically stumbling through the whole sequence and constantly running into people, and he's also not familiar with their customs at all. He wears shoes where he isn't supposed to and just doesn't pay enough attention. But I think it's also clear that he has no ill will. He's just overwhelmed by all the new impressions, and maybe he's a bit overzealous. He even instantly catches the sight of a beautiful young woman and is up to make a move when suddenly her boyfriend or husband appears. Everything seems to be interesting or fascinating to him, and it's honestly just a lot of fun to watch Prithviraj get entangled in all of this. And how the relationship between him and Bhadra, played by Kavya Madhavan, slowly develops from some light-hearted flirting and typical rom-com banter to this deep and dangerous love is also quite lovely, especially in the beginning when Bhadra thinks he's a real goofball. Well, which he actually is. And once again the presentation does a nice job in adding a lot of fun to that.
രസം മോര് പുളിശ്ശേരി.
The love song in sequence Pina Kamano is also wonderful, and in general I really liked all the songs in the movie. But where it really lost me time and time again was in the overall storytelling. It all feels very loose, and the basic conflict is set up so early on and somehow not really followed up on with much consistency. Anandan wants to light the candles, but the evil magician Digambaran opposes it because he tries to get a powerful magical jewel, the so-called Nagabanikyam, which lies protected in a secret place guarded by snakes and guarded by the power of Anandan's family. That place is that enchanted cave which I briefly mentioned earlier, which is a wonderful set that reminded me a bit of Indiana Jones movies. And yet the story somehow progresses without any urgency, which is why Anandabhadram is never really tense or even all that exciting. For me it felt a bit too much as if Anandan just arrives in the village and then stuff happens. It's pretty all over the place, and I was never quite sure how much of a threat Digambaran really is. He is played by Manoj Jayan, and it's a memorable role, and his performance is very thick but fun. But how one scene transitioned to the next, and why that battle in the village wasn't really forced more by the involved parties, I was pretty confused by a lot of it, and in the second half at the latest, I was a bit bored or rather frustrated that this wasn't better structured. There are two really fun fight scenes in the movie, and I liked how Digambaran and the blind martial arts expert Chemban have this big vendetta, but I was baffled that Anandan wasn't involved more into it all. I thought there was potential for Chemban to try to recruit him to help him out, but it all never really connected well enough. Very late in the movie, Biju Menon has also an appearance as the character Sivaram, who I think was the son of the local astrologer, but it all felt too muddled. So in the end, Anandabhadram has a lot of style and great moments, but as a whole, the more than 2 hours of runtime weren't fully able to hold my attention because of the rather loose and sometimes confusing storytelling. So in German I'd say, Das Schlangenjuwel ist ein ziemlich abgedrehter, verrückter Fantasy-Mix mit viel Schauwert und zuweilen richtig spaßiger Präsentation. Für meinen Geschmack ist das Ganze aber auch zu spannungsarm und verworren erzählt. I give Anandabhadram 6 out of 10. It's more like 6.3, but I don't do that.
Interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Alright, that's it like always. Comment below and let me know what you think about Anandabhadram. You can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram and Letterboxd, and now also on Patreon, simply at the Jimmy Cage. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all I have to tell.